2 episodes ago, I told you FIFA generates about $13 billion a cycle. Last episode, that nobody in the system holds equity. And so today, the only question left that matters is, where does the money actually end up? Because in a normal business, you follow the money by just reading the cap table. Revenue comes in, costs come out, then owners keep the difference. But the World Cup has no owners. But yet there's $13 billion that's flowing through it right now, and every dollar has to land somewhere. So I traced it. 4 destinations: the teams, the host countries, FIFA itself, and a 4th group that nobody puts in the headlines, who might be doing better than everyone. And some of what I found has genuinely surprised me, especially what the United States, Mexico, and Canada are getting for their billions. This is episode 3. Follow the money. FIFA distributes $871 million to the 48 participating teams this year, a record. $50 million to the Champions Federation. Every qualifier gets a minimum of $12.5 million, even if they lose all 3 games and fly home. But remember, from episode 1, that $871 million is roughly 7% of cycle revenue. And now let's follow it from FIFA to the Federation, and now past the Federation, because this is actually where it gets interesting. The wire from FIFA doesn't go to the players, it goes to the Federation. And what happens next depends entirely on each country's internal deal. And those deals range from professional to opaque. The best case version, so if we look at the United States, one of the hosts, US Soccer has a collective bargaining agreement. They have an actual negotiated contract where the Federation pulls the World Cup winnings from the men's and women's tournaments. They keep 20% and they split 80% among both squads. That's written down, that's enforceable. Player side lawyers signed off on it, but that's not the typical version. The typical version is where players receive somewhere between 20 and 30% of the Federation's take based on whatever was agreed, sometimes negotiated squad by squad, tournament by tournament, and occasionally into disputes that spill into public view days before kickoff. Think about that as a business person, as an entrepreneur. The talent, the entire product, is on revenue share terms that are renegotiated per event with counterparties that have no owners and political leadership. In any other industry, the top 0.01% of talent worldwide would have restructured this decades ago. But here, they can't. Why? Episode 2. The alternative to playing along is not playing in the World Cup. And there is no substitute product. Monopoly on the dream. That's the leverage. And now the hosts, the United States, Mexico, Canada, and here's where I have to be straight with you because the honest answer contradicts almost every press release that you've seen. The pitch for hosting is always the same. What is it? Visitors, visibility, billions of dollars in economic impact. You've seen the projections. Individual host cities claiming $1 billion or more in economic activity. But here's what the actual research says. So a University of Toronto study found that 12 of the last 14 World Cups produced net economic losses for the host cities. Not underperformance, losses. And 2026 is following the same pattern because the host cities don't share in FIFA's revenue. They don't get a cut of the broadcasting, they don't get a cut of sponsorship, and FIFA takes the ticketing. What the cities get is all the costs: security, transport, stadium modifications, public services. And economists that are tracking this tournament put those costs at well over $100 million per city. On top of that, the US federal government alone has put $625 million into security funding across its host cities. Several states have also waived taxes on FIFA's activities. Those waivers are worth tens of millions more. An independent analysis has found even those figures were understated. So if we run the host cities P&L, which we run it honestly, the costs are 9 figures, guaranteed, public money. The revenue is a temporary bump in hotels and restaurants. It's real, right? But it's concentrated just in one sector and industry, and it's only for 1 month, with the research showing gains fade almost immediately. And some of the new spending isn't actually new at all. It displaces tourists and locals who avoid the chaos. That kind of leaves the question, why does anybody want to host? This is the question as a business owner you should ask, because somebody is saying yes to a money-losing deal repeatedly for decades. And the answer is that the people who decide aren't the people who are paying. Politicians get a global stage. Construction firms get contracts. Consultants get fees. The costs actually land on public budget, where no single taxpayer feels them enough to fight. Concentrated benefits, diffused cost. It's one of the oldest patterns in political economy, and FIFA has built the single best machine ever devised for exploiting it. FIFA keeps all of the scalable revenue. The hosts keep the unscalable costs. And every 4 years, cities line up to bid for that privilege. And I don't think that's me being or suffering from cynicism. That's just reading the ledger of what people are spending and what governments are spending. The third destination is the house. What do they say about the house? The house always wins. FIFA's operational cost for the tournament runs around $1 billion. Everything from team transport to referees. And if you set that against $13 billion in cycle revenue, $871 million to teams, $355 million to clubs through the program that we covered in the last episode, you're left with an enormous surplus. FIFA's answer? It goes to development. The organization says that it reinvests the overwhelming majority, a figure north of $11 billion this cycle, into global football. It gives grants to all 211 member associations, youth tournaments, infrastructure in developing football nations. And to be fair, a meaningful amount of real development does actually happen. Pitches do get built. Federations that could never fund themselves do get funded. But if we connect the two things that we established in episode 1, which is number 1, FIFA's power structure is one country, one vote, and most votes belong to the smaller federations. 2, FIFA distributes development money to exactly those federations. The money that flows out of FIFA is also the money that keeps FIFA's leadership in power. Development grants and political loyalty travel through this same pipe. And that's not really an accusation of any individual, it's just the architecture of FIFA. It's why reform movements at FIFA historically die in the Congress. You're asking the majority of voters to restructure the system that pays them. In 2015, the US Department of Justice indicated that numerous FIFA officials and execs had been caught racketeering and money laundering, and charges were pressed against them. And the scandal changed the personnel in the organization. And when we look at the architecture that we just described and ask yourself, how much did it change the incentives? Now, the fourth group, they don't hold a press conference. Sponsors and broadcasters aren't spending billions as charity. They're buying the largest guaranteed audience on earth. And for the big consumer brands, the math has worked for decades. They're not winners of the World Cup's money, but they are the buyers of its attention, which is fine, and that's known. The quieter side is the betting markets. On a single prediction platform, one trading volume on this World Cup has passed $14 billion. Now read that against everything else that we've said in this episode. That's more than FIFA's entire cycle revenue, and that's just on one platform. And FIFA doesn't touch a cent of it. The tournament generates an economic shadow that's far larger than the tournament itself. Media, betting, hospitality, content, and almost all of it accrues to businesses that never have even written FIFA a check. And that's the final lesson of the ledger. The biggest financial winners of a mega event are rarely inside the event themselves, but they're the ones who are positioned around the attention that it creates, with none of the hosting cost, none of the federation politics, and no FIFA to answer to. Attention is the asset, and the tournament, it just mines it. So the full map of the money: teams, 7%, filtered through the second layer of federations before players see a fraction of it. Hosts, they pay for the party. FIFA keeps the surplus and recycles it through the same pipe that secures its power. And the quiet winners is everybody who's positioned around the attention, outside of the system entirely, which sets up the last question of this series. And it's the one I probably get asked the most personally. If national teams can't be owned, and if hosting loses money, if FIFA is a closed shop, then where does an investor actually touch this game? Because serious money like sovereign funds, private equity, billionaires who've done the math is pouring into football right now at a pace we've never seen. And they're not stupid, right? They see something. And the answer is the clubs. And the case for owning a football club is stranger and honestly more interesting than most people think, because the majority of clubs lose money and smart capital keeps buying them anyway. So the next episode, which will actually be the last one in this series, I'm going to break down why, and I'll tell you why it's the corner of this entire ecosystem that I pay the most attention to. That will be in episode 4. See you there.